AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Friday. Good to be with you today. Matt, Hunter. Hunter, have you ever lived any place where they have moved Halloween off of Halloween?
No.
I've lived two places where they did this.
Oh.
Both in Iowa.
Oh, of course.
No, let's not go down there. Actually, don't, because they don't do Halloween on Halloween, for goodness sakes. You know, but there is, if you look at Care 11, there is a story out about a group that's trying really hard to officially move nationally Halloween from a Halloween to the Friday or I believe it was the Saturday before Halloween.
Okay.
And here is my problem with it, because having lived in a place where you had that happen, the argument that you're trying to put forward that this is somehow not going to be, this is going to solve problems. There are far more drinking and driving people going out on the roads on Saturdays after a day of college football, or on Sundays after a day of NFL football, on a Friday night. There is far more alcohol being consumed and people trying to drive around at that point. Absolutely. So, I mean, this idea that the kids are safer, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But the real problem I have with this is both times this happened, not only did we get all the trick-or-treaters on the Saturday beforehand, and for the most part, most people, that's what they did, but undeniably on Halloween night, ding dong. Well, I got half a baked potato. Do you want that? I've been gorging myself on the leftover Halloween candy. Here you go. Who likes nutmeg? Yum. If you want to move it, if your community wants to move it, more power to you. Knock yourself out. Me personally, just keep it. I would just say keep it where it is.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, the argument that it's not going to be as dangerous, that it's going to be safer per se, I disagree with that, because once again, it's just your ratio of drinking and driving is much higher on a Saturday afternoon and on a Sunday afternoon than it is on a Wednesday night, like this year is going to be Wednesday night next Wednesday.
I agree.
952-946-6205. A lot to get to today, including the breaking news out of Florida, the arrest of the 14 bombs. This is a mass assassination attempt by a terrorist. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Plus also Doug Wardlow news. Oh boy, you know how much I like talking about that. But to go to Democrat of the Day, we head on over to Kelly Morrison, who is currently the DFL candidate for 33B. She's kind enough to take some time today to talk about her campaign. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. We should mention that 33B, this is the west side. You're out a good chunk of Lake Minnetonka area, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the southern edge of Lake Minnetonka.
Mm-hmm. And you do have Excelsior's in there. It looks like, is it part of Minnetonka's in there as well?
No, it's part of Chanhassen. It's Deep Haven, Excelsior, Greenwood, Shorewood, Spring Park, Mound, Tonka Bay, and Minnetonka Beach. And
yeah, it is kind of pieced together. There, once again, there are parts of it which are on the west side of that lake, kind of towards the northern side of the lake, but as well, a good chunk of it of 33B is on the south side of the lake. Have you spent most of your life there in 33B?
No, actually, I'm a native Minnesotan. I was born here, but I moved around a lot as a kid. Lived here through high school, and I moved away for college and medical school and residency, and moved back and lived in Minneapolis for a while starting in 2001, but have lived out in Deep Haven, actually, for the past 9 years.
Okay. And I have to ask the question, what prompted you this time around to say, you know what, enough's enough, I'm running for 33B?
Well, I care a lot about our community and our state and our country, and your reference to what's happening nationally is just more troubling news. And I was really disturbed, like many of us, by the 2016 election. I really couldn't stand the way that campaign was conducted. I was very unhappy with the outcome, and it definitely energized me to get more involved. I'm in women's health, so I, unfortunately, by definition, am involved in politics because women's health is often politicized. But I've never run for office before. And I got more involved in our local DFL, learned more about who our representative was, and I was disappointed and kind of fired up to get involved, and here I am.
I should mention you're running against someone who I often reference on this show, Cindy Pugh, who is and that's me saying it, not you. That's my pronunciation.
Yes.
But
Thank you for clarifying that.
That is my pronunciation. But Cindy is not. She is a never-ending cornucopia of unbelievableness. And when you talk about this, where we're at today, I mean, my God, we had a man tried to assassinate two presidents, a lot of sitting Democrats, former government officials, regular citizens in this country, and there is a shocking amount of the Republican Party who's basically like, false flag, this isn't real. Where we're at right now, I don't blame you, because it feels like sometimes we're on the verge of the precipice.
It's a really troubling moment in our country and potentially in our state. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to take a deep breath and do everything that we can to not amplify an already hot situation. We've got to get back to talking to each other civilly, problem solving together, and remember what this country is all about. We've never lived up to our promise in America, but we always have to keep striving to be what this place could be.
And I think one of the things that has to happen is we have to step back and realize we can disagree. When I was growing up, I used to disagree with people all the time. Sometimes I was on the more conservative side of an issue. But it's gotten to the point now where when you get to the point where, you're disagreeing with me, or you're vocalizing your displeasure in a Supreme Court nominee, or you're saying that omnibus prime should not be a process of how politics goes on, the rebuttal cannot be a speeding car. That cannot be a bomb. It cannot be a threat. And I think that you're exactly right. We have to get back to the point where we understand just because we disagree, it doesn't mean that it has to go to these extremes. And I think that that's where we're at right now, where there's a lot of people in this country that if you disagree with them, if you're not respecting the people they want you to respect or doing what they want you to say, well, then you're a sworn enemy. And I agree with you. I think we have to find some sort of mid-ground again.
Yeah, I think so. And my district is really interesting because it is a completely purple district. There's sort of 30 to 35% known Democrat and 30 to 35% known Republican. And then there's this big middle of unknowns or independents. And so it's kind of like an old-fashioned American area where Democrats and Republicans live together. Mm-hmm. We're not kind of siloed off. So I feel like there's a real opportunity to come together and problem solve together again. And I'm having a lot of fascinating conversations at the doors with all kinds of people. So we have the whole spectrum in this district. We've got the far left progressives and the far right, whatever you want to call it, and everything in between. And so I really see this as an opportunity. And I've had great conversations with people who self-identify as Trump supporters. We have respectful dialogue. I listen to them, and they listen to me, usually after I listen to them, to give them the respect. I'm giving them I'm giving them the respect of hearing them out. And by the time the conversation ends, I'm not sure that they're going to vote for me, but they can't demonize me anymore. And I think that is a small step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about your district, I mean, and I'm saying this is me. Cindy Pugh is a far-right extremist. I mean, that doesn't represent 33B. You need someone in there that's going to understand, because all politics is local, and you have to merge your politics to the community, not force your opinion on the community. And I think that that's where things are at. I am fascinated because your district is a fairly affluent, fairly wealthy district. I want to hear more about what are you hearing as far as issues that going on when you're going door to door in your district.
Well, and again, that's one of the things that's so interesting about the district is I'm hearing the gamut. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the lake and water is something that really unites everyone in this district. So there are a lot of environmentalists who are very concerned about clean water and are very concerned about the reality of climate change. And then there are people, probably the number one issue that I think polls would hold up to across the state is healthcare. People are really worried about being covered, about being able to afford it. They're afraid of change, and yet they know it's not working now.
I'm glad you brought up the water quality. I mean, because Lake Minnetonka for me has always been a bit of a personal there's a personal story there. I not only did I lived my senior year in high school, I lived out in Wayzata, but for a long time I would take my kids out. I always thought for many years the best beach in the state was the Wayzata Public Beach, right in downtown Wayzata, which, by the way, I think the water is technically in your district. If I'm looking at the map correctly, I think the water on that beach is in your district, but the beach itself is in a different district. But
Yeah.
but
My district is more water than land.
it is actually. But we went there, one of the things that happened, which we don't go that lake anymore, is the zebra mussels. I mean, it went from being it was a wonderful lake, and then it just became everywhere you went, everything was covered in zebra mussels. When you talk water quality, I mean, for especially people that live on these lakes and more lakes, these invasive species are coming in and they're taking a lake. I mean, well, White Bear Lake is its own thing, it's losing all of its water. But I mean, on a lot of these lakes, it's these invasive species that come on in. And as a property owner, as a person that owns that piece of land, you're looking at value and you're watching your value go down, not because of anything that you've done, but because of an invasive species that you can't really do anything about. I mean, it is a major environmental issue, and it's not just on larger, wealthier lakes. It's every lake in the state. If we don't start kind of looking at this and trying to figure out some solutions, we're going to have some very large problems. We're going to end up having every lake in the state have issues like this.
Absolutely true. And that would be beyond tragic for our beautiful state of more than 10,000 lakes. And we have to address it, and as a doctor, one of the things that I think is so important when we're making new policy is that we're making evidence-based, fact-driven policy. So we got to get the best scientific minds together to put our heads together to figure out this puzzle of aquatic invasive species and keeping our lakes pristine and swimmable and fishable for all Minnesotans.
Absolutely, and at least getting to a point where we can stem this course, because it only seems to get worse. It is really, and it's dangerous because it is going to be every lake in the state eventually here if we don't stop it and stop it now. Healthcare, what is the angle? Because obviously, I mean, healthcare is something, as I've talked to rural Democratic districts and even metro area Democratic districts. I mean, obviously the concern, especially middle, lower class, rural communities, farmers, is okay. I mean, my margins aren't there for us to pay for health insurance as it is. I can't go off of the plans we currently have. What is that the same story that you're seeing in 33B?
Yeah, absolutely. We've always prided ourselves in Minnesota in a lot of areas regarding healthcare, but particularly our low uninsured rate. And that rate has been creeping up as people are saying, I gotta roll the dice because I can't afford to pay for health insurance. And that's bad for all of us because I see it from a public health standpoint. As long as we're all getting the care that we need, we all are better off. And that's why I think the experiment, in a way, of trying to add the public option to buy into Minnesota Care is a potential way to increase that pool, to increase competition, to bring down costs. And that will help some of our people in our rural areas, and that will help some of our small business owners and people who's either aren't covered by their employer or their employer insurance is just out of reach. So I really am advocating for trying that out in our state.
And what you are bringing up is just it's the problem that we have, and this is why for when you're in rural districts, when you're in middle and lower income districts, that it's such a Herculean fence to look at, this wall that's in front of you. Our healthcare is not the problem. Isn't with quality. We have the best healthcare on the planet. It's accessibility. And when you can look at people who are maybe middle class, upper middle class, and they're even saying, hey, God forbid, I mean, something bad happens to a family member, then you're all forced with having the decision of bankruptcy or death. This is not a decision, a developed country should not have those two as your only two options when it comes to caring for the sick and needy within your family.
Absolutely not. It's shameful that we're in that situation. I completely agree.
You imagine have some door knocking opportunities. We got 2 weekends left. I imagine you're booked all weekend next 2 weekends, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm working hard out here. Well, I've just finished up the third round of knocking my entire district.
Can I ask you? I mean, have the Democrats been out knocking the doors? Because that's one thing I've heard too is that the DFL is getting a lot of great response, especially in some of these rural communities that are traditionally Republican, because there hasn't been DFLers knocking on people's doors. Have you been to a lot of doors where a DFLer hasn't been there in a while?
Yep. I've been to a lot of doors like that, and people really appreciate it. They're glad to see you, and they appreciate the effort, and they want to be heard.
Absolutely. I think that is so much the key. It is absolutely the key because when you described earlier about your door knocking, where you have the respectful conversation, even with people that might not agree with you, it's the fact that all of a sudden you're a human being. You're no longer that Democrat. It's Kelly Morrison. And
exactly.
it becomes a very difficult thing to just dismiss you because, Kelly was right. She had good points. She was there. I think that is the key. So good on you getting to every door in your district 3 times. I think you've got the record so far of any Democrat I've talked to.
I'm working hard.
Absolutely.
And so are my amazing volunteers, by the way.
And by the way,
it's a team effort. There's
you can
no doubt.
you can be a volunteer this weekend, next weekend. It's crunch time. What are you doing to make the blue wave happen? What are you doing? This is a winnable seat for the DFL. If you want to help out, you can get out to 33B this weekend, next weekend. Kelly Morrison needs your help. The website, Kelly, if people are interested in finding about volunteering or donating to your campaign.
Absolutely, and I would love to have you come out and join me. It's actually so much fun. If you've never door knocked before, you got to try it.
Okay.
So my website is morrisonforhouse.com, www.morrison, morrisonforhouse.com.
I will link to everything on Facebook, on Twitter. I will link to all this, and I will get this out to you. Kelly, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time, and I really, on a personal level, I really want to see you in St. Paul. I think you'd be
thanks so much.
I think you'd be a wonderful addition over in the Capitol. Kelly Morrison, 33B, Democrat of the Day. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care. And by the way, everyone, listen, go on out, volunteer, donate, door knock, help her campaign. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. Oh, we got a shout out. Well, kind of a shout out from Doug Wardlow on Fox. You'll hear what I'm talking about when we come back in a little bit. It's the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950.